our deep desire. The members of our group are Olivina Sarah, Costa, and lastly is Clara Aprilia. So, first of all, we're going to talk about the plot or the synopsis of a story. The first event is Blanche Dubois visits her sister Stella, who lives in New Orleans with her husband. Stella welcomes her sister happily and warmly. I would say Blanche visits her sister intentionally so she can stay with her sister since their family lost their home, Belle Reef, and Blanche has no place to live. As time goes by, conflicts happen. Starts with the moment when Stanley finds out that Blanche lost Belle Reef, which it makes him upset because he feels that he's the owner of Belle Reef too. He confronts Blanche about what happened. It makes Stanley start get annoyed by Blanche's existence in his apartment. Second conflict happened in Kowalski's apartment when Stanley hang out with his friends and he seems not in a good mood from the start. Then Stanley had an argument with Blanche just because of a small thing. It makes him cannot control his emotion. Then he hits Stella because she tried to defend Blanche. Beside the conflicts, a happy moment also happened at Kowalski's apartment when Blanche and Mitch or Harold Michelle meet for the first time and had a friendly conversation there. They go on date and learn that they need each other after what they've been through. Months later, before Blanche's birthday dinner, Stanley tells Stella about Blanche's past and her bad behavior after she lost Belle Reef. She had affairs with several men and her bad behavior when she was a teacher that makes her get fired. Stanley also stated that he already told Mitch about this. Mitch, aware about Blanche's past and takes advantage of it. He visits Blanche at Kowalski's apartment while he's half drunk and asks to have sex with Blanche. Blanche asks him to marry her instead because she thought that they both fall in love and she needs a man to protect her. But Mitch refuses her wish, which it tears apart Blanche's dream. The moment right after Mitch leaves, Stanley confronts Blanche about her lies. He approaches her threateningly and rapes her, even though Blanche already tried to defend herself. It leads Blanche becomes mentally unstable and sent to state mental hospital. So, first of all, we're going to talk about the plot or the synopsis of the story. Before, and now let's move on to the characters. Blanche Dubois is an unfortunate widow who experienced a lot of bad things during her life. She lost her house, she often got rejected because of her sexuality, got fired from her job. Also, her husband passed away, which leads her to cope it or heal herself in unhealthy way. She had affairs with several men to fulfill her needs of love and attention. She becomes mentally unstable because she treated badly and even the worst, her brother-in-law rapes her. The second character is Stella Kowalski. She is a Blanche's younger sister and Stanley's wife. She is more calmly than Blanche. She is also a mediator between Blanche and Stanley because she wants to defend her sister while try to be a good wife for Stanley. But then she ends up becomes a traitor and betray her sister by help her husband to get rid of Blanche and send her to mental state hospital. The third character is Stanley Kowalski. He is a working class man and Stella's husband. He is an abusive and domineering man because he thinks that he is the ruler of the family, so he feels that he has the power to abuse his wife and normalize it so she can obey him. He treats Blanche poorly because he hates Blanche's attitude and he uses Blanche's past against her, and in the end, he rapes her. The next character is Harold Mitchell or Mitch. He is Stanley's good friend who falls in love with Blanche. He is maybe around 20s or 25. He lives with his sick mother, which probably makes him a kind and gentle person, but then becomes disenchanted with Blanche because of her past and her bad behavior. And the last two characters are Steve and Eunice Hubel. They are a married couple who friend with Stanley and Stella Kowalski, and they live above Kowalski's apartment. And now we get to the settings. There are setting of place and setting of time. A streetcar named Desire took place in New Orleans, Louisiana, in French Quarter, in the late 1940s. French Quarter is a famously bohemian part of New Orleans, a real party atmosphere, and the exact opposite of the world in which Blanche and Stella grew up. Now it's time for setting of place and time of each scene. Scene 1 happened on open court. It is the first dark of an evening early in May. End quote. So it happened on evening and it took place in a two-story building in Elysian Fields. Scene 2 happened on open court. It is 6 o'clock in the following evening. End quote. So it happened on 6 o'clock in the evening and it took place in Stella and Stanley's apartment room. Scene 3 happened on open court, the poker night. End quote. So it happened on night and it took place in Stella and Stanley's apartment room also. Scene 4 happened on open court. It is early in the following morning. End quote. So it happened on morning time and it took place in Stella and Stanley's bedroom. Scene 5 happened on open court. The afternoon has faded to dusk. End quote. So it happened both in afternoon and dusk. And it took place in Stella and Stanley's bedroom. Scene 6 happened on open court. It is about 2 a.m. on the same evening. End quote. So it happened on 2 a.m. in the evening and it took place in Stella and Stanley's apartment. And now we're on to scene 7. Scene 7 happened on open quote. It is late afternoon in mid-September. End quote. So it happened on late afternoon in mid-September and it took place in Stella and Stanley's apartment room. Scene 8 happened on open quote. 2/4 of an hour later. End quote. So it happened exactly 45 minutes after scene 7 and it took place in Stella and Stanley's apartment room. Scene 9 happened on open quote. A while later that evening. End quote. So it happened on pretty much the same day as scene 7 and 8, but it's in the evening and it took place in Stella and Stanley's bedroom. Scene 10 happened on open quote. It is a few hours later that night. End quote. So it happened on the same day as scene 7, 8, and 9, but it's on nighttime and it took place in Stella and Stanley's apartment room. Scene 11, the final part, happened on open quote. It is some weeks later. End quote. So it happened a few weeks after scene 10 and it took place in Stella and Stanley's apartment room. And now it's time for social setting. The social setting is quite
casual and the community is diverse. Black and white live alongside each other. This shows with how at the beginning Eunice and her black neighbor converse casually with each other. And there's no racial discrimination mentioned in this drama, so it's pretty chill community in French Quarter. And the second one is this play happened after World War II, and of course, the war brought changes, especially in the gender roles of women and men. After the war, the men returned to their jobs and the women returned to their roles as housewives. Men in this play want to be dominant, especially in the house. They are really controlling. Stanley Kowalski is the perfect example for this. And the third one is this play described the apartment room as cramped place and nothing like the places back in South. It's safe to say that the apartment is built for low-income families that can really afford big, expensive apartments.
There are 7 conflicts that exist in this drama. The first one is when Stanley Kowalski beats her wife Stella Kowalski. Happens in the early morning when Stanley and his friends, which are Mitch, Steve, and Pablo, are drinking and playing poker in the Kowalski kitchen. Stanley is a bit annoyed at the time because he is losing the game. Then, Stella and Blanche just got home after their night out. While waiting for her turn to the bedroom, Blanche turns on the radio and Stanley got annoyed of it and asks her to turn it off. But Blanche neglects it. It makes Stanley comes to turn it off by himself. But then, Blanche turns the radio on again. And it makes Stanley angry, so he threw the radio away to the window. Which is what Stanley did. Stella confronts him about his behavior, but he beats her up. Stella is upset because what Stanley did and leave the apartment with Blanche to the Eunice apartment while Stanley's friends calm Stanley down. After Stanley gets sober, he realizes what he just did to Stella and quickly chases her after to Eunice's apartment. And he is shouting Stella's name until Stella forgives him. Because of her big love for her husband, she forgives Stanley and then they get back together to their bedroom. The second conflict is when Stanley accidentally overhears Stella and Blanche's conversation about him. It happens when Stanley is out to get the car greased, while Blanche confronts Stella about her reasons why she is back again to Stanley after what happened last night. And Blanche tries to convince Stella to leave Stanley. Blanche also said that Stanley is just common, and she also compares Stanley with an ape. But without them knowing, Stanley is at the back door hearing all the conversation, but he just acts like he's not hear anything. Let's moving on to the third conflict, which is when Blanche and Mitch are getting romantically serious. After their first conversation about Mitch's silver cigarette case, they are getting close day by day. Seems just perfectly made for each other because both Blanche and Mitch are lonely and need someone to rely on. They are often go on dates. Mitch even told her sick mother about Blanche that further plans her. Blanche also trusts Mitch and she tells him her past, which about her husband, whom died a long years ago, that still haunted her with guilty because before her husband died, they are getting in a serious fight, and Blanche also thought that they can be married soon. The fourth conflict is Stanley tells Stella and Mitch the truth about Blanche. It is in the afternoon of Blanche's birthday. Stella is preparing a dinner for Blanche, Mitch, Stanley, and herself. When Stanley comes in and tells her that he found out the news about Blanche's sordid past. He says that after losing the Dubois mansion, Blanche moved into a fleabag motel from which she was eventually evicted because of her numerous sexual liaisons. Also, she was fired from her job as a school teacher because the principal discovered that she was having an affair with a teenage student. Stella is horrified to learn that Stanley has told Mitch this story about Blanche. the birthday dinner runs awkward, and Mitch never comes until the birthday dinner ends. Next to the fifth conflict, Blanche and Mitch broke up. Just 3 hours after the birthday dinner, Mitch comes to meet Blanche in the apartment. Mitch confronts Blanche about everything that he's heard from Stanley. Eventually, Blanche confesses that the stories are true, but she also reveals that it is because her need for human affection after her husband's death. Mitch tells Blanche that they won't ever get married because of what he just heard. After knowing the fact that Blanche is not that good lady he thought, Mitch tried to have sex with Blanche, but Blanche forced him to leave by yelling fire, fire, and fire to attract the attention of the passersby. The sixth conflict is about Stanley that accuses Blanche of lying and raped her. When Blanche is alone in the apartment after she expelled Mitch, Stanley is home from the hospital. Then, Blanche tells Stanley that she will soon be leaving New Orleans with her former sweetheart, Shep Hanley, which Stanley already knows that Shep is never exist. Shep is just Blanche's delusion. When Blanche wants to pass him, Stanley won't move out of her way. It scares Blanche and makes her smash a bottle to the table and threatens Stanley, so he might leave. But instead of leave, Stanley grabs Blanche's arm and he said it's the date that they have had set up since Blanche's arrival. Blanche tried to fight back, but she loses because Stanley is stronger than her. Stanley overcomes her and carries Blanche to the bed, but then the pulsing music indicates that Stanley's raped Blanche. And finally, the last conflict is Stella's betrayal and Blanche's sent to the asylum. This has happened a few weeks after the rape, when Stella finally out from the hospital. While Blanche is in the bed, Stella and Eunice pack Blanche's bag. While packing the Blanche's bag, Stella told Eunice that she can trust what Blanche tells her that her husband raped her. And then the door is knocked by a doctor and nurse from mental asylum who will pick Blanche. Knowing that, Blanche starts to get panic and struggle against them. But then, the doctor approaches Blanche in a gentle manner and convinces her to leave with him. Finally, Blanche agrees to go with the doctor with a look back and saying goodbye, while Stella sobs with her child in her arms. And yeah, finally, that's all our presentation today. Thank you for your consideration. See you and thank you.